Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our review for Werewolves. Yes, we have been looking forward to this one, and for those of you who have seen some of the content we've dropped this week, you know, or at least if this is the first time you're finding us, we got to see this movie ages ago. We actually got sent a screener for this back at the end of October. And yeah, we actually got to sit down with the director, Stephen C. Miller, speak with him for a little bit. And, it's just kind of been a waiting game ever since. We've been waiting for more people to get their hands on this thing and get to see it. And I am happy to report that that is tomorrow for many of you. And yeah, it's really exciting. This is something that we've kind of been lacking in the werewolf space for a little while. We haven't had a werewolf movie that isn't trying to be, I guess, overly cerebral and trying to be very message heavy. This one is very much just a slam bam action horror thriller. And I'm excited to talk about it. Luke, how are you feeling about Werewolves?
We were lucky enough to get an early look-see at that trailer before it had dropped, and we were able to do a reaction to that. And it was already on our radar prior to that, and that trailer drop just got us even more excited. And then as we were able to kind of connect some dots and, put the word out and able to see this a little bit early, that anticipation just grew, knowing that this was in our inbox and we were actually going to be able to sit down and watch it. And like you said, since starting the podcast, we've had a handful of werewolf movies, and it now seems, looking back, like if this was the 80s or 90s, it was very easy to get that true blue werewolf film where it's face value, it is just that werewolf tale that we're used to. And then that kind of subtext started trickling in saying, this is a very versatile idea in terms of being able to apply it to mental illness or any of those kind of certain issues. And that kind of became the norm. It certainly has been over the past few years in the films that we've been able to see, where it's not that true blue werewolf film anymore. It's almost flip-flopped, where we used to get those. Now it's more so it's a different kind of concept. We're applying a different idea to the werewolf concept, and we're trying to give you some sort of idea, some sort of commentary about it. So when we saw this Werewolves come out, and it is just that wild, wacky, action-heavy, horror-heavy, practical werewolves, boy, were we excited. I guess you'd say, as we are almost kicking off December now, as this is released, it is going to be in December, Christmas came a little early for us.
Certainly. And, just diving into the film itself, I am so happy to say that this is everything that I was hoping from just a action-packed, gore-filled werewolf thriller. Everything that you want from a movie like this to fall in line with, like, something like a Dog Soldiers is a good comparison to this, is just what I was hoping we would get. And Stephen C. Miller and team absolutely deliver that. They even give us a little bit extra, which, I didn't necessarily anticipate, but is a very, very welcome addition to this movie. And hopefully, if all things go well, can kind of set us up for maybe a little bit more of a future in this world. So I have to stay light on that for now. But man, this movie, just right out of the gate, it's something that is completely breakneck. Like, we spend maybe 5-10 minutes with kind of our central character played by the great Frank Grillo, who's awesome in this, and we get to the lay of the land. We get to understand a little bit just from like news reports and things of what this kind of supermoon apocalypse looks like. And then it's really smart how they decide to lay that out, because they only give us a little bit, and then we start moving into our inciting incidents. And then as soon as this thing kicks off, I mean, you see it in the trailer, once this stuff starts happening, it does not stop. The rest of this film is all out practical effects, werewolf action, and it's awesome. I mean, it seriously lives up to the hype that we were kind of hoping it would, with just seeing these awesome beastly creatures on screen, and you get a whole lot of them, which is something that I have to commend the filmmaking team for. They did not shy away from showing the werewolves.
And this film really does find a happy marriage between the action element as well as the horror element. And they really do deliver what's promised in that trailer. When you have Frank Grillo delivering a line like "bite me," I think that really sets the table of what you're going in to see Werewolves for. And this really does start with that beginning where I was really engrossed in the actual idea as well as the tone that they set, because everyone's kind of preparing for the supermoon and what's going to be going on. It almost plays like a natural disaster kind of film, I think, of boarding up your doors and really building that anticipation for the audience of what is going to be going down. And that was honestly one of my favorite parts before we get into the werewolf aspect of it, because I wasn't sometimes you kind of really get into the meat and potatoes a little bit too early with werewolf films. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, where we really want to build that anticipation and see what they're going to be delivering to us. And I'll say Werewolves does that absolutely well. We're with our characters just the right amount of time to really resonate with them and feel like we have a dog in the fight before we get into, what we came to see. And they absolutely deliver on what that werewolf aspect is. When you look at the trailer, and I've pointed this out a couple times, where we have one of our characters inside the house and she's going back and forth, and we look into the kitchen, nothing's there, and then we leave for a second and the camera comes back and there's a giant hulking werewolf in there. That really sent goosebumps all over me because I was so excited. They really did build that anticipation, and there's a perfect mix of tension as well as terror in this film while we do get those action elements here.
Agreed, and I think that the werewolves themselves, they are so beautifully handled. I mean, there is really no CGI enhancements to them very much. I think that the biggest thing people have called out in the trailers is that little bit of CGI there. I mean, that is a necessary evil, I think, at the end of the day. But I gotta give them compliments that, we didn't see this on the big screen yet. We could watch this at home. And I gotta still give them compliments that it didn't look too bad. It looks pretty good once you see the final render of it. And, I think they did it and they covered it in just the right way, because once you actually see these practical effects beasts and they're actually moving around and actually taking up quite a bit of screen time, it's exciting. I mean, it gets that kind of that childlike enthusiasm about how are they doing this? They're making movies old school style. It's exciting. I was all bought in on them. And I really loved how they handled them. I thought that they were both intimidating, exciting, and the little flares of personality is all I will say to kind of touch on that they give throughout this film. Really, really welcome addition. These werewolves aren't necessarily your stereotypical kind of, uh, you know, they are savage beasts, but they do some interesting things with a few of them that I did not expect. They almost work more like the raptors from Jurassic Park at times in this film. Like there's a few scenes that are very, very inspired by some of that stuff, and I was very on board with that. And it also helps to again have a really top-notch cast that can really deliver a lot of this kind of, dare I say, ridiculous, bombastic world that they're living in, where a supermoon arrives and people are now turning into werewolves left and right, and you're trying to get that under control. But they still sell it enough. They balance that kind of 80s action aesthetic with kind of a more modern tinge. And I never felt like they were pushing too far or going too unbelievable during it. They really stayed within the grounds of it. And I think they understood the concept so well.
And looking at the lay of the land, like I had said about the werewolf films that we've gotten over the past few years, have just been more so social commentaries, subtexts on mental illness and things like that, and maybe a little bit more slow moving than what we anticipated when we're dealing with a werewolf film. And when you say ridiculous, that is not a negative at all. They really, Stephen C. Miller and his team really turned the volume up to 10 on a werewolf film and really delivered on a unique concept that we don't see that often or ever really. When you're looking at multiple werewolves and you were talking about those personality traits, sometimes you worry that they can get lost in the pack, I guess you would say, where, nothing's going to differentiate one from the other. But they were able to convey personality traits in certain instances to really, say, that's a rather intriguing concept, and really build those antagonists to what we get toward the end of the film, where it is almost like, yes, we have werewolves in here, but you can actually point them out and say, I dislike this one more than I dislike that one because of antics that have happened in this film. And like you said, people have pointed out maybe some CGI aspects of it, which it is a necessary evil, especially the ground that they cover in this film. Like you said, they don't shy away from showing these werewolves, and it has become kind of a formulaic and say less is more when we're dealing with werewolf films. Of we're not really going to show them right in the forefront here and really get, that from head to toe aspect of it. This one, they really do show them. They really make use of the practical aspect. It's like you make a beautiful werewolf. Stephen C. Miller knew we got to show them off. We got to convey that terror, which they absolutely do here. It's just so much fun. It's one of those things where, it's hard to find a negative in this film. And I know
Mhm.
maybe people are going to think we're being overly positive, but the one thing I can say about this film is this is such a satisfying werewolf film, because we always look at werewolf films and say, maybe it's the best that we can get for right now. But this one, it checks every box. It just checks every box that we want in a werewolf film. It keeps your attention, it keeps your intrigue, but also delivers on that terror aspect as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the best thing about this is like it's coming out at a perfect time for werewolf movies. Where, like we said, we've kind of been in a lull with them in the sense of like there's some cool ideas here and there. There's different takes, different angles we've seen, which aren't the worst, but we haven't had a definitive werewolf movie that I can point to in the last 10 years and say, hey, this is a really great badass film that we talk about like we do with our American Werewolves, The Howling, Dog Soldiers. This is one that I'm definitely going to be able to say, hey, if you want to have a good time and see just how savage these creatures can be and how to handle this material right, I think Werewolves is certainly going to be that for me. It's entertainment. It's absolutely something that I think you should rush out to the theater this weekend and check out, because I can only imagine how this thing is going to look on the big screen. I'll be taking my dad to go see this over the weekend. He's looking forward to it. And I'm just over the moon, literally, with this one, just by saying that this is such an itch that needed to be scratched, and I'm happy that they actually delivered on it. Because again, as much positivity as we go in with these films, they so often don't deliver or just barely scratch the surface, as to where Werewolves completely rips into its concept, disembowels everything and gives it to the audience and says, here's your fresh kill, enjoy it. So for me, I have to sit with Werewolves as a must see.
In this film, we talk about werewolf films in the past, and hey, we love our late faces. We love Eight for Silver. Those films are absolutely fantastic. But Werewolves is such a different take on a werewolf film in terms of satisfaction, because we don't get this mix of action, horror, and then these practical werewolves very often. It's been a long drought that we haven't seen something like this in a very long time in terms of really looking at Silver Bullet, looking at American Werewolf in London. Some of these fun films that we just want to throw on that are so digestible and you can have a great time with. I'm putting Werewolves up there in terms of a werewolf rotation, that this is going to be on my television regularly when this comes out for a release. So, this is an absolutely exciting time. They just knocked this one out of the park for me. This is Stephen C. Miller is a werewolf fan making a werewolf movie for more werewolf fans. That's absolutely what this boils down to, because he checked every box that we need. Anything that you would like to see in a werewolf film, I guarantee you it is in Werewolves, because it is so unique. It's such a different take on what we normally see. Now, for me, unfortunately, this doesn't hit that must-see. This is a very, very strong recommend. This is going to be something that I'm going to revisit regularly as we look back on the films of 2024. But for me, very strong recommend. It just never got to that must-see element for me. But in terms of a werewolf subgenre film, it's an absolute must-see.
100%. And I think there's enough concepts here, enough things that they leave on the table to really set this up for we could get multiple werewolves, whether we're following similar characters or not. I think that it's something that we could easily see this being a very interesting series, just watching how this concept of a supermoon apocalypse, what that does and how it changes the game for werewolves. I think is really exciting, and it does give you a very unique take. And I think that's something that if you're looking for something really fresh with this genre that is also still paying ode to those classic 80s feels that just, Carpenter, just kind of, like you said, silver bullet kind of drenched 80s feel at times, I think this is absolutely going to nail for you. And yeah, this is certainly one that we cannot wait to go see again. If you are looking for something to watch to kick off your Christmas season, why not stop in the theater and see Werewolves this weekend? It is going to be dropping on December 6th. And yeah, I really hope that we can get the horror community to support this one, not just because, we got treated so nicely by the filmmakers and everything here. We got to speak with the director, genuinely because it's been so long since we've had a werewolf movie that has just landed so hard, especially for myself personally. I know for Luke, we've talked about it a lot over the last month or so. It's just exciting to be able to have a satisfying werewolf movie again. And I hope this opens the door for more. I really hope this shows studios this is a viable property. We don't just have to do zombies and vampires.
And when it's done right, I'll say it just warms your heart, I think, for any horror fan. And we were lucky enough to see Terrifier 3 a little bit early. We still went to the theater to see that one. Werewolves in that same boat. We saw this a little bit early. I'm so excited to go to the theater with a bunch of fans just hooting and hollering, having a good time, because there's so many scenes in here that everyone's just on the big screen. I think you're going to lose yourself in the story. I think you're just going to have an absolute great time. And hey, if Stephen C. Miller and his team see this, if we are going to get more werewolf films down the line, my only suggestion, hey, this is being released in December. Next time, if we get a Werewolves in December, let's make it a Christmas movie.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Add it in there. Let's have it. I'm all for it, but I think we have to wait for the third one for that, Luke. It seems like that's going to be the magic bullet, but hey, I'm all for it. Alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap us up here for our review of Werewolves. Definitely let us know if you got a chance to see this over the weekend, or if you're excited to see this. Certainly hope that if you were on the fence about it, that our review was able to help you sell that ticket. And yeah, I'm excited. We do have a lot more Werewolves content on the channel. I just released my list going over 5 films you should watch before you see Werewolves. And just to let you know, if you want to hear what Stephen C. Miller, the director, thinks of those movies and what you should watch before you see his film, there's also a fun little nugget in there for you. So go check that out. I'll have it linked at the end here. And yeah, that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, guys, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.